specific research topic. So the section will address the needs of the researcher. What do you have to consider to select the topic or the idea that you have found? What can be researched on and what can influence the choice of a topic? So let's make progress. So the right topic to be researched on often depends on a number of factors. Means that we have to consider the things to avoid or what will potentially affect the topic that we want to use. So we have to avoid, number one, common or overused topics. The reason is that if the idea you have or the topic you intend to study is something that has already been done, we can confidently say that there is nothing new that you are bringing out of your research outcome. Your research outcome will only report what we already know. So we need to avoid a topic that is common or overused. For example, as I was indicating earlier, these topics may be such that maybe within your ecosystem, everybody knows about it. For example, in few years back, in the accounting and banking related issues, a lot of people were dealing with topics such as working capital management. So often you will hear working capital management implications on profit. Okay, so over time, there has been a lot of study. There have been a lot of study that are talking about working capital management and profitability. So when you go through literature, you find a lot of studies in this area. It means that we know adequately how working capital management practices affect working profitability. As a new researcher, you need to avoid this type of topic because there is nothing new that you are going to bring. Rather, within the same context, within the same accounting or banking and finance, you may look at, okay, this is the new area around how profitability is being affected. For example, we can talk about maybe, what about corporate governance? Does corporate governance practices affect a firm's profitability? So you are moving away from working capital management. So common or overused topics must be avoided. Secondly, topics that relates to religion or relate to controversy should also needs to be avoided. The reason is that you are dealing with individuals' emotions, and these individuals are supposed to provide you with answers or responses that can shape the outcome of your work. If it is controversial, they will be unwilling to provide you responses because they find it to be very much of controversy around their domain. Can you imagine somebody gets up one day, want to conduct research to know why our friends from the Adventist don't sing the Ghana national anthem? I mean, what exactly do you intend to find? You are dealing with emotion. So religious issues needs to be avoided. They may not give you answers to what you seek. And what is your business with whether somebody sings national anthem or not? It can raise concern. So we need to avoid such related topic. The third thing to also avoid is general or broad topics. If the topic is general or your idea is too broad, what exactly will you achieve out of that? There will be, you should have focus. So instead of a broad topic, focus on the research. What is the clear focus? For example, you want to know somebody says, I want to do a research on implications of COVID-19. Okay, so implications of COVID-19 is too general. COVID-19 has done so many things as far as its implications are concerned. What exactly do you want to do as far as the implication is concerned? So we should avoid this broad conversation. So like somebody would rather say, maybe I'll look at implications of COVID-19 on SME businesses in Ghana. There is clarity, there is a focus, moving away from just the general COVID-19 conversation. Then we also have to avoid topics that are too narrow. If they are too narrow, specifically, we can say we already know the answer. So there is nothing that you have to consider. Okay. Narrow says that the area of study, as we said, is limited. There's nothing new or nothing that you can find out of the study area. We have to avoid it. Then lastly, controversial political related topics must also be avoided. We are in a dispensation where politics drive everything. It means that whichever party that you find yourself in, they may be willing or unwilling to speak about the issue when they know specifically it will affect them or otherwise. So once the topic is going to create controversial politics related ideas, we need to also avoid such idea or topic we intend to embark on. So you may find this to be very useful when we are able to avoid such topic within the domain of our research idea. If we're able to avoid these, then the next question is that what then can influence the choice of the topic that we intend to consider? These are some key, let's say, influences or factors that gradually drives the selection of a particular topic of interest. You have, number one, you as the researcher. The you factor here means that as every researcher, you have adequate knowledge in a particular field, which in turn drive what you can do. So your knowledge area gives you a bit of authority in that area, a bit of perspective in that area, which helps you to clearly define where you want to conduct your research in. For example, all of us here belong to certain disciplines: accounting, HR, banking and finance, marketing, insurance, and public administration. It is presumed that you are getting knowledge in these areas. So over time, your ideas, your views are shaped based on the knowledge or training you are gaining from these domains. So at every point in time in your idea generation, you look at topic in these specialized areas to create the topic, or that influences the topic that you intend to conduct your research on. So you as a factor, you the researcher, you play a critical role in the choice of your topic. Those of us who want to do long essay, for instance, because you belong to some specific disciplines, your choice of topic is more influenced within the discipline you operate. You can't move to say that an accounting student is deciding to do research in or selecting a topic in a public administration unit, unless maybe there is a relationship. But I realize that for whatever topic you select, the inclination drives exactly where your domain is. Secondly, supervisors. Supervisors here, we are looking at potential individuals who would supervise or lead or direct the research that you intend to undertake. The reason is that they are believed to be authorities, they have expert views, or their research focus is within a certain specific area, and their views, their directions influences what you would do if they are to supervise your work. Okay, so if you have a faculty in finance, means that we believe that within finance, that faculty is an expert in a certain finance related domain. So he or she becomes who would direct how the selection of your topic will drive on. It is important to note that the supervisors, I don't want to will say, even in accounting, they may not know they may not have focus, or their focus is not in all accounting related issues. You may have some in tax, some are in audit, some are in financial reporting, some are in their focus is maybe accounting sustainability. So their focus will drive where your research topic would have to be selected from. So supervisors play key role. So we need to find out the research interest of that potential supervisor. Have a discussion with them, or you may have to read their publications. For instance, in UGBS, when you go to the faculty, UGBS faculty page, each faculty profile indicates their focus of research, where I expect that you read, understand what they do over time. I am in the operations, management and information systems, operations and management, OMIS, information system, means that my focus of research is more around operations research and digital innovations. I can't come and supervise a student from accounting unless the topic has something to do with accounting and information system. That's one I'll be allowed to supervise you. But beyond that, my domain would have to be the focus or influencing where you are conducting your research in. So supervisors are important. The next is data source. Okay, source of data, of course, we've indicated that our research must give or provide some answers, which becomes the outcome of the research. Largely, the outcome of the research depends on data. So if you don't have data, you don't even know where you are going to collect data from, you don't even begin the research at all. So the topic that you are selecting, what type of data will you need to answer the questions that you are raising? Because we are often, as researchers, restricted to a particular topic because of access to data or lack of access to data in a specific domain. Sometimes it is difficult to gather data when you know or you're expecting some individuals to provide answers to the questions you are raising. As I said, especially when you have topics that are much or shrouded with a lot of controversies, the people who are supposed to provide answers are not available. That can change or influence the topic of interest. The next one, we can look at the current trends. Okay, like I said, within your domain, because you can't do everything, you have to consider specifically what are the particular issue, how important are these issues, how are they perceived to be driving what is happening within your ecosystem. Based on that, you can decide to select a topic in that area. For instance, I know in the banking sector or the accounting sector now, or in digital innovation sector, a lot of people are talking about fintech and big data. Okay, so more financial technologies and big data analytics. So if that domain is the main or the current issue, then I can decide to create a topic out of that. For example, I can now decide to say that, let me look at a topic that has to do with financial technologies and maybe digital enthusiast consumers. So I can say that I'm going to understanding factors driving digital enthusiast adoption of financial technology. That gives me a drive with a topic because the current conversation is around this domain, which helps to shape the topic in question. So current trends are very critical when it comes to the choice of topic selection. Then sponsors. Okay, sponsors are also influential, whether individuals or agencies. The reason is that these agencies or individuals sponsors potential research. So if there is a project they are funding, the focus is more on their goals or the specific objectives they want every research to address. So for instance, if Coca-Cola want to understand the impact of Coca-Cola business in the Ghanaian economy, and they are sponsoring some researchers to undertake this study, the researchers must align with the goals or objectives of Coca-Cola because it is their money and that drives the focus of their research. So where you have any fund, you have to ensure that the focus of the research topic is aligning with their goals and objective of their research. For instance, WHO again cannot fund a project and you'll be going to do something that has nothing to do with maybe health related or maybe gender related projects. Once they are funding, you have to stay in line with their objective. Otherwise, you just have to move on and go and conduct a research that is different from their goals and objectives. So most funding agencies have specific topics of interest, which are based on their goals, and you have to align accordingly. The last one, which is very thought-provoking, is what we call research gaps. Gaps in research. Gaps in research simply states that, or what we perceive to have been done over time and what have been found. Is there something that still needs a consideration? So gaps would detailed discrepancies in existing research literature. Research literature here means that we are looking at published work, okay, published articles within a certain scientific community. And based on what has been done, there are still issues that needs to be addressed or areas of studies where there are reasonable gaps in the existing literature. We'll be going through literature along the line. Okay, so we can confidently say that the gaps that we are trying to address or found in the existing literature will lead to the new contribution, or we say the potential contribution that lies in literature. This is my new study, means that the new study is bringing new knowledge in the ecosystem that I operate. So we need to look at what are the gaps in the research, in the new research or the topic that we intend to conduct our study on. It leads us to say that our research topic, which is good, must be original. It must be different. That's why we say don't consider common or overused topic. What is we are talking about originality, something that has not been considered or different from what we already know. The topic that is good must be of interest to both you, the researcher, and the supervisor. It must be relevant, very important. As I talk about a fintech, now a lot of people are talking about fintech, big data. So time and relevance are very important in the selection of the topic must elucidate this clearly. It must also make contribution. Of course, what is a contribution? What is a new thing, new knowledge that your study is supposed to bring to bear? Your study or topic must be specific and distinct. It must be distinct from what others have done. Out of the topic, we must understand the overall purpose of the research. So incorporate the main purpose of the research. Then again, it must be captivating. People should look at your topic and say that this is a topic that is worthy of a research that needs to be conducted on. Lastly, the topic must also see to it that questions can flow. We must ask questions that is going to lead us to address them through an appropriate research design. Select a topic that will ensure that we are addressing it in that what is the appropriate methodology that we can use to address the kind of study that we intend to conduct our study on. So every good research topic must have this ingredient as far as the contribution of new knowledge and creativity or innovation is concerned with the selection of the topic. These are some examples that we can have. Okay, these are some topics that we can consider. And when we look at women entrepreneurship in Asian developing countries, their development and main constraint. We can also look at critical factors of women entrepreneurship development in rural Bangladesh. Or what are some entrepreneurial motivations that are determinants towards women entrepreneurship challenges? We can look at all this as part of our conversation. So, somebody, what is this? Oh, okay, this is not a question. Let's ignore that. All right. Do you have any question out of all the things I've said? Because this is our first assignment, first group assignment. And I want each group to look at a specific program of study. I know you are mixed, you have accounting and all that. That's not a problem. Just consider one of them. So you have been engaged by a company or an institution to provide an introductory lecture on what is research and how to select a research topic. So using relevant example to your disciplines or discipline, prepare a professional PowerPoint presentation with respect to the needs of the client. Kindly draw on chapters 1 and 2 of the reference text of this research. Further, I want to see only 15 slides or minimum of 12 slides, and you will be assessed based on originality, innovation, and ability to present the content in a comprehensible manner. The deadline for submission is 15th June 2023. Please do not copy groups. Don't go and copy yourselves. But both of each of the group that copies each other will be scored 0. So please note that. Note that as soon as possible. You submit the work on Sakai. So I'll create a Sakai link, and group leaders are supposed to submit their work accordingly. Any questions so far? This group, you don't like asking questions. Any question? Okay. If you don't have any question, I think we can proceed to the next conversation. We are going to look at research proposal. Okay, how do I develop, or how will you develop a research proposal? As part of your term paper, I've indicated that each group will present a research proposal. So you would have to understand what a proposal is, what goes into a proposal, and how do we convert our proposal into the chapter 1 of our long essay. I expect that by the end of this section, everybody knows component of a research proposal. The conclusion of a research study and writing an abstract, I'll hold it for now, but we'll just look at what are the key components of research proposal. As I said, all the conversation, or most of the conversation I'm having, you can reference that from what's in R 2023. As a matter of fact, the entire slide is dependent on what this book provided. So I'm relying on Professor Boateng's Research Made Easy text and other textbooks to explore the entire conversations around research. So go to the library. I'm sure this book is available there. So what is research proposal? I mean, more importantly, what is the research proposal and what is the role of the research proposal? We can say that for some graduate programs, after first degree, you want to continue, you'll be required to present a research proposal. So it plays a primary role in the pursuit of a graduate qualification. What this means that before you be given even admission for some graduate programs, not all of them, you are to present a research proposal. So what is the proposal? We are saying that the proposal here, literally, it is more like a written academic contract, though not legal, but the proposal details, okay, what the researcher intends to study, how you intend to study that particular research issue, and maybe a plan on exactly how you are going to collect data and how you'll be interpreting the data. It is important that there should be clarity on your research issue. You have the topic, but how do you intend to go about studying the topic? So usually we'll say that this contract is between you, the researcher, and your potential supervisor or supervisors that can tell exactly your intent to study, how you want to go about it, and how you plan to interpret your results. Reasonably, once the supervisor go through the entire proposal and the supervisor is clear on the potential contribution of your research idea or issue, the proposal goes through the stage of approval. Once it is approved, the supervisor is just indicating reasonably that based on the opinions expressed in the proposal, they are adequate and will lead to great or some research findings that will be more revealing based on maybe a certain research issue or an outcome. So the supervisor will now approve and agrees in their opinion that the approach that you have selected for the research is plausible. It's a plausible one and will lead to an adequate result that will provide some knowledge within the ecosystem that you operate in. Once the proposal is approved, the next stage is what we talk about. Now you can proceed to continue with a long essay. So note that the approval is only possible once the supervisor agrees in total that all the things you've indicated in the proposal are adequate and are achievable. Go on and continue with the main work. So that is very important, which also means that the proposal is not a fixed blueprint. So we need to understand that. Doesn't mean once the proposal is there, you have to do everything that you've indicated. Of course, you have to do everything indicated, but along the line, the proposal can be updated based on maybe fresh ideas or fresh views out of the literature you have reviewed or out of what is changing. So we need to incorporate these new ideas into the main proposal so that we won't say that you should be fixated so much on it. Sometimes along the line, the entire proposal may change. So you'll be asked to develop a new one. That is a process. So once there are new ideas, ensure to incorporate it into the original proposal. The reason is that it was the minimum core intellectual contribution of the research that was set in the beginning. So you need to go back and ensure that you have adequately incorporated that into the proposal. Somebody's hand was up. Is there any question?
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes.
So you were saying as time goes on, the aim of the research could change. So is it so? Let's say after the approval and the individual, the aim of the research begins to change. Does the supervisor, like, does the person go back to the supervisor for approval on the new, let's say, things or ideas being added to the research, or once it's approved, it doesn't go, like the supervisor doesn't have to approve it again?
Okay, thank you, Robert. As far as we are concerned, research is a process. So maybe in your attempt to review literature, you identify something new. It is only appropriate that the supervisor should be informed. So you go back and discuss with the supervisor. The truth is that the supervisor will tell you, okay, incorporate it into the main work. Okay. That's why we said that the proposal is not a fixed blueprint. So you have to inform the supervisor. It's different from when you are conducting the research yourself. Even when you have to, it deals with sponsors funding the project, you have to go back to them because your earlier conversation was based on a certain premise. So you need to discuss with them, seek their input. If they disagree with you, what will you do? You have to align with what they are asking you to do. But again, once there are new ideas that you have obtained along the line, you have to discuss with your potential supervisor. Then you can conclude or go on with the research work. I hope that answers that. Please note, as I said, research is a process. So however you begin, when there are new ideas, you just need to appropriately, especially when it comes to your potential supervisor or supervisors, you go back. What is sad is that the supervisor will now end up knowing at the end of the research that you have incorporated something new, which largely they have no idea about. So it's important to include them in our quest to find new ways to addressing our research. Okay, so I hope that answers your view. Let's make progress. Okay, or any other question? All right. So if we know what the proposal is, then we must also consider what goes into the proposal. That leads us to talk about the components of the research proposal. What you see here, you have a table here, 2 columns. One column says research proposal. The others talked about chapter 1 outline. Under the research proposal, the points you see there represent the components of the research proposal. And once we are talking about approval, once the proposal is approved in academic research, that becomes the chapter 1 of your study. So you convert the proposal after the approval into the chapter 1 of your research work. So let's note that. So under the component, we have introduction. What does introduction mean? We'll be discussing that research background, research problem, research purpose, the research objectives, the proposed research questions. Then we jump to significance of the research, the literature review, proposed methodology, what is the limitation or what are the limitations of the research you intend to consider. Then we can also talk about the project schedule. Once that is done, what is the chapter outline, then the references. So these mainly considers the component of the research proposal. We are going to look at them one after the other. The first one, the introduction, has to do with research background. The background of the research simply will provide more like introduction to the research issues. Here, the consideration or what you have to look out for is that based on the research issue that I have identified, what is or what are the current conversations or current discourse, current trend or views or opinion around the topical issue that you are considering. This has to do with especially what is it that people are reporting on? What is it that people have found and you believe is shaping the direction of your research work? Yes, Cindy, your hand is up.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
Please, the course rep said because of network problems, he was logged out from the group, from the class. He's trying to join for over 15 minutes now, but he's not been able to join. He said you've not added him to the class.
But I can't see him also waiting.
Yeah, please, that's what he had.
If you log out and sign in again.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't know the challenges with your connections around. Okay. So as I said, the research background will detail based on maybe you can look at global perspective, what has been happening, what is it that people are reporting on. if not its global perspective, in your research area, what is it that people have found, they have done and found? Just report on them. So this probably may be characterized by perhaps some industry statistics or empirical research views, or some practitioners' views about the research issue. So you may possibly have to report on these, linking them together. Of course, they should be linked together to ensure that there is some understanding with the current issue that evolve around the research issue that you have. For example, I was given the digital financial technology and digital enthusiasts as my research topic based on current conversation. So I may begin my conversation to talk about maybe in more recent years, financial technology applications are becoming more relevant in our day-to-day financial transaction. Interestingly, the international maybe finance organization, intelligence organization, is indicating that almost 3 billion consumers are now relying on financial technology applications to support their financial transaction. In a more recent study by maybe Boatin et al., it is revealed that about 70% of consumers in the US relies on financial technology to support their day-to-day financial transaction. This said means that financial technology applications are becoming key platforms where most consumers want to trade or purchase their items on. In a developing country such as Ghana, financial technology is still emerging, where consumers are also relying on these platforms to transact financial purchases. A report by Bank of Ghana indicates that about half of the population are still not familiar with the use of financial technology. However, only 15% of consumers rely on financial technology to drive their purchases. This means that more research needs to be conducted to provide clear understanding of financial technology within the Ghanaian sector. More importantly, this study will look at digital enthusiasts' behavior towards financial technology. Therefore, the study will look at what are the key factors driving digital enthusiasts to using financial technology. All that I've said is to talk about the story so far about fintech and why I think my study needs to be considered. That is what we call the research background. So this is even an example here, okay, which we can look at this example nicely. Okay, so Michael, are you here now? I see I've admitted you severally, but you seem not to come up. I don't know what is up. Check your network, please. So this is an example, understanding risks, benefits, and strategic alternatives of social media applications in the public sector. So when you look at the topic, it's mainly on social media and implication with the public sector. So what the authors seek to do here is to, first of all, give a background conversation. So can I have Angela Jifar Denyo, if you are present, please read the background for us. Angela.
Hello.
Go on.
Please okay. Understanding risks, benefits, and strategic alternatives of social media application in the public sector. In the government, new media are capable of transforming power relationship between citizens and organizations to create a more open government. New media might even have the potential to transform current governance system at the city, state, or country levels. These applications facilitate openness, transparency, and democratization. Lathrop and Ruma, 2010, Novak, 2009. Moreover, events such as the WikiLeaks affair, in which private communication between the U.S. Secretary of the State and U.S. diplomats were made public, point towards the fact that the concept of open government, democracy, and freedom of information were being transformed by social media. Although there are many benefits and promises from social media and related technologies, several risks in association with their use. Public and private organizations are usually social media to communicate with citizens and customers with different results, and not necessarily as a component of a long-term strategy. Many organizations have adopted social media following a trial and error approach, and at the expense of several organizational resources. For instance, an exploration of Mexican states' use of social media shows that only about 400,000 citizens out of 100 million are exchanging information with their state governments. Sandoval, Almazen,
Ignore
Gilgazia.
the references. Go on.
Okay. Moreover, this same study shows that about 20% of Mexican states discounted their use of Twitter or Facebook during the last year. Social media is still a new technology that needs to be better understood in terms of its benefits, risks, barriers, and strategic use.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Angela. So, guys, you
Wow.
see, all that we've just read is just to indicate what is happening around social media, what people have done around social media and the public sector. You realize that there is nowhere you see the authors or the author trying to define what social media is, what public sector is. Nobody is interested in that. Go straight to what has been happening. Don't go and define what definitions should be minimized as far as the research background is concerned. Try to avoid them if I have to indicate that. So just talk about what has been. So go through literature. Get some literature. I'll teach you what we call the literature taxonomy along the line. But report on, just like telling the story beautifully about what has been done, what has been found, and all that. This is another one that talks about telemedicine adoption in Rwanda. So now there's a context to the problem, not just telemedicine. So when you go through, the author reveals what has been done in other countries, specific, and the findings they have identified. Based on that, draw down to the context of the study. So in the second, I think how many line? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In line 9, the author now began to drive into a more context focused here. This paper assesses the reality of this theme by exploring the efforts being made by a sub-Saharan Africa country like Rwanda to implement telemedicine in the health sector. Clarity is given. Okay, so we should be able to indicate exactly what the background of the research is. Then, if we clearly state all these stories, what has been found, what the background is, it takes us to what we call another component called the research problem. The research problem is seeking to explain in terms of what has been done, what has been found, and what you have reported on. What is it that is missing that you intend to address? Okay, so the research problem simply talks about a need of a solution, or what is the discrepancies that you have identified about how things are and what they ought to be. Okay, so as I said about like what we just read, the financial technology and digital enthusiasts, all that I was trying to raise is that although there are benefits to financial technologies that have been reported, there seems to be a missing link in a developing country where fintech is still at its early stage of implementation. Therefore, we need to understand how digital enthusiast consumers in Ghana are adopting what financial technology. I've just reported that it has been done elsewhere, but within the context, nothing or no contribution has been so far proposed, and that is why this study seeks to address that. So I'm clearly indicating in the previous research that I've seen what has been done, what seems to be missing, and why it is important to address the research gap. That explains what we call the research problem. So, for example, the first paragraph here talks about what has been done. So there are empirical studies where people have used data to examine what they perceive to be the issue. Okay, so empirical studies have shown that 10.7% of all startups, blah, 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 is indicated here. But the second paragraph now is where the current author wants to consider that over the past 10 years, these empirical patterns highlighted, that is the above, highlighted the magnitude and the importance of user entrepreneurship for industrial system. However, as firm founders and end users remain relatively unexplored by scholars, even though the Kaufman firm survey conducted among a sample of 5,000 startups launched in 2004 showed that 40% of user entrepreneur firms were created by end user entrepreneurs. These exploratory studies, so there is a focus now, focuses exclusively on consumer entrepreneurs and aims to extend our knowledge of these unconventional but growing form of production. So you see that once we understand what has been done, what has been found, we are now talking about what needs to be addressed. And that is what the research problem seeks to explore. Again, once we are able to detail our research problem, it should be leading us to what we call the research purpose. So in the highlighted statement here, you see more precisely, we aim to shed light on why, in some cases, innovative consumers decide to diffuse and commercialize a solution they have developed for their own use. So out of the research problem leads to where we call the research purpose. Somebody's hand was up. You can ask your question. All right. Okay. So this is another example of the research problem leading to research purpose. I like this. Let me show you this. This is a paper by our former dean, Professor Joshua Abel. Okay. I like the study because when you read this particular work, there is clarity on what has been done, what has been found, and where the direction of the author also seeks to address. So corporate governance and financing decisions of Ghanaian listed firms. If you peruse through carefully, you will see with clarity what the author identified has been done and what needs to be done, which lead to the development of the research purpose. Okay, so that is it for the research problem. And as I said, we have to create a research purpose, the overall goal. What do you intend to achieve? What do you want people to see after your study is conducted? And that is called a research purpose. It's just like what organizations identify as their vision. What is the vision of the research? So the purpose is a concise, clear statement of the specific goal or the aim of the research. So you often see that the purpose may include specific variables or where the population of the study and the setting for a study, the context of the study, clearly elucidated in the research purpose. So, for example, is what we have here. You have a topic, the triggers of entrepreneurship among creative consumers. So you see the study as the purpose being stated there, okay, aims to shed light on why, in some cases, when you come to the down, online relationship marketing and customer loyalty, clarity again on the overall aim of the study. So we have to indicate clearly what is the aim of our study, which is the research purpose. Here's another example. Okay, then the Professor Abel paper I was indicating, you see clearly this study examines the relationship between various variables of corporate governance and the capital structure decision of firms listed on the GSCE during the 6-year period. Clarity overall, this is what the study will achieve. Make it clear and state it there. All right. Any question? Another example? Okay. Once we've developed the research purpose, which I said is more like the vision of the research, we need to identify what we also call research objective. Company vision and mission. Mission statement now comes to say that because the vision is too broad, we are going to do A, B, C, D to achieve the vision. So the research objective now becomes more specific and focused statement and all questions that will communicate in greater detail the nature of the study. So there should be clarity on what we will do to achieve the overall aim. That is the research objective. So whilst the purpose is a clear statement, the objective now outline specific points, 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C, D. We are going to do A, B, C, D to achieve the purpose above. So example, this the triggers of entrepreneurship among creative consumers. We have the purpose being as a statement indicated there. We are going to do what? 1, 2, 3 to achieve the purpose. So 1, to explore the mechanism that trigger creative consumers to become entrepreneurship. 2, to explore the pathways of end user entrepreneurship. 3, to explore the favorable times or period of life for end users to undertake entrepreneurial ventures. When you combine all these 3, it must answer the purpose above. So you don't create research objective out of nothing. You are creating it based on the purpose of the research you want to undertake. Okay, this is also another example. Purpose is there, objective outline. Purpose is there, objectives outline. It's another one. Okay, so gradually, for whatever purpose that you indicate, identify the appropriate questions or objectives. Step by step, how do you break down the purpose into specific attainment? Indicate it nicely, and we go on to do that. Once we are able to develop the research purpose, it leads us to what we call the research questions. Questions are more like, we said we will do this to achieve that. What are the ways that we need to, or what do we want to include in order to achieve that objectives? So research questions are more like interrogative statements that will focus on answering the research objectives. So some says that once you have the objective, convert it into questions, okay, in order to drive what exactly you would want to achieve. Okay, so if I have, for instance, my research purpose up there, I have my research objectives detailing the 3 points there. The research questions now ask questions about the objectives that you have raised. So when I say, or when I indicate here to explore the mechanisms that trigger creative consumers to become entrepreneurs, the question I'm asking is, what mechanism trigger creative consumers to become entrepreneurs? To explore the pathways of end-user entrepreneurship. What are the pathways of end-user entrepreneurship? To explore the favorable times or period of life for end users, I can ask questions, are there more favorable times? So we can say, by way of converting the objectives into research questions, we are aligning, or we are finding ways to address such research objective. So please note that. Good. If this is clear, then at every point in time that you have research questions, research objectives, per the number of research objectives, define the research questions out of that. It doesn't also mean that if you have 4 research objectives means that you should have 4 research questions. No. You may have to find a way to say that because I have 3 research objectives, I can ask 2 questions out of that to address the objectives above. In a more quantitative approach, sometimes you won't see research questions, but you see research hypothesis. Means that instead of using research questions, the author decide to now use research hypothesis. They are the same. It must also lead to you answering the research objectives. So typically, you cannot have in one research work research questions and at the same time asking research objectives. You must choose one of them. You can't have the two concurrently because they all seek to answer the research objectives anyway. So choose which one, whether you are going to use research questions or research hypothesis to address the research objectives as you have indicated there. Right. Means that every good research question must be clear. There should be clarity. Okay, there should be focus. It should not be too simplistic. You should have some bit of appropriate complexity in order to understand. Because if the question is straight away yes or no answer, it doesn't, you have to avoid it as far as the good research questions are concerned. So clarity is key. Focus is key. Appropriate complexity is also key. All right. So some examples here. The next component, we are going to talk about proposed literature review. Again, in the proposed research, we have to be more mindful. At this stage in the proposal, we are not writing literature review. We are now going to tell the story about, okay, based on the research issues, these are probably the few areas, or these are the articles or the literature we will be using to explore the area of study. I know that at this stage for new researchers, it's always difficult to develop research literature, but I'll go through with you. But in the proposal, you are only trying to tell where you are going to get sources of information or knowledge to support your work. Okay, so often at this stage, you explain the key concept in the research. So if I'm like my study, and I'm going to look at the behavioral issues of, or behavioral perspective of digital enthusiast consumers, then maybe I'll say that the study will consider behavioral concept or the theory of behavior to explain the concept. The other aspect will also look at the different types of financial technology globally. I'll also look at some of the what are the key factors of adoption of technology. So here, I'm just trying to explain where I'll be conducting or where I'll be getting my literature from. So you are not supposed to write the literature at this stage. This is an example here. Who can we have to read for us? Samuela Tichogbe. Can you kindly read this for us, Samuel? Present or absent?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please, there's a lot of noise in my background.
Oh, okay. Sorry then. Let's have another person. Cecilia Z. Cecilia,
Yes, sir.
can you kindly read for us?
Okay. This study investigates the impact of mobile phones on the micro trading activities of women traders in Ghana. To obtain answers to this objective, 4 strands of literature will be reviewed. The first strand will explore the concepts of trading or commerce from the perspective of the transaction cost theory. Transaction cost theory is arguably the most commonly used theory in studying issues relating to assessment of the impact of ICTs on commerce or trade. Transaction costs are described as the cost of running a system. The study will examine the impact of mobiles on the cost involved in micro trading, features of mobile phones and benefits of using those mobile phones in the reducing cost of trading. The 4th strand of literature will examine the impact of mobile phones generated by virtue of the benefits. Mobile phones are conceptualized to have 3 effects on its adopters. That's incremental or amplification, transformational, and production. These effects will be used to analyze the impact of mobile phones on trade.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. So guys, you see that at this stage, like I said, the preliminary or proposed literature review just talk about what you will do, not writing. So go into details, find out what exactly or where are the sources I can consider. Just indicate them one after the other. Once we're done with our proposed literature review, another most important component is the proposed research methodology. Okay, proposed research methodology here simply is also to task you, the researcher, to indicate the approach of your research. What is the strategy we are going to use? How do you want to collect data, analyze the data, where? Then we can also talk about ethical issues that you have to consider as far as the methodology is concerned. So at this stage, if you remember, when we're discussing the research design, we talk about the plan on how the researcher intends to implement the overall study. And that is where the research methodology comes in. Okay, so you realize that the methodology is what you would do. So you are what I would do to achieve the results that or the outcome of my study. Therefore, we need to know, okay, so what is the study approach? So identify the type of study that you are going to carry out. Are you going to do exploratory study? Are you going to do descriptive study? Are you going to do explanatory study? If these things are defined clearly, then we will know that you are going to use a quantitative or qualitative or mixed method approach to unravel the outcome that you seek to provide. So, and it is important that you don't just state that the study will use quantitative. You have to indicate why quantitative, or why you're going to use qualitative, or why you believe the mixed method study is important for your research work. Having said that, we need to also indicate the unit of analysis. Okay, so are you going to look at individual, household, organization, industry, or maybe country perspective? So that if I'm talking about my digital enthusiast, then I could say that, okay, because the study seeks to investigate key factors and also understand the impact of these factors on the adoption or acceptance of financial technology, the study will use a mixed method approach. And focusing on this, the study will consider only digital enthusiast consumers for the study. So realize that I've indicated why I'm choosing a specific what approach. Then once I've identified the appropriate approach, it will lead me to the research strategy. Am I going to use a case study, or I'm using survey method? For a more mixed method, we'll say that, okay, it will be more of a survey approach. Why? Because digital enthusiast consumers, they are a section of the population among consumers. So I'm only using them as my sample. So a survey study. And a survey because I'll also be using what we call questionnaire as my source of data. So you realize that your story will be told from the top: quantitative, survey method, study population, you are using a questionnaire, or qualitative, case study or cohort discussion. I'm going to look at observing or interviewing some group of persons that I've identified. So the next stage is saying that where the data is going to be collected must be clear, and why you are selecting a particular study population. Why are you going to use questionnaire instead of interviews or observations? Or why the others and not the others? Where are you going to get the data from? You have to also indicate it. Then I said the ethical consideration can also be considered, because ethical consideration would have to look at, if you remember, whether or not the procedures you are using to collect the data, are they scientific? The people who are going to give you responses, are they aware? Have you informed them of what the study is about? So we have what we call informed consent. Means that you must provide utmost indication of confidentialities to the individuals you are going to use for the study. Are you forcing them to give you answers, or they willingly give you answers based on the understanding of the study area? So ethical consideration is also important as far as our research methodology is concerned. Informed consent, provide it clearly. Also, because of validity and reliability of your research findings, you have to indicate clearly who is going to give you the answers that we seek to project. This is an example of how to develop the proposed methodology. So the author here says that the study will use quantitative approach to study the gender differences in the adoption of e-banking services among university students. The study population are students in the University of Ghana Business School. A study by Texan found that students enrolled in finance and accounting programs are more likely to adopt e-banking services. A survey will be carried out on a sample selected from students in the 3rd and 4th year enrolled in finance or accounting programs. A questionnaire concerning the adoption and use of e-banking services will be administered to 150 students. The study will also examine statistics on student banking activities from campus banks. So you see that there is a clarity on, number one, the approach of the research or the types of the research, the strategy of the researcher, where the data will be collected and why, the study population, the primary source of data, and what strategy you are using to collect the data, and the kind of statistics that will be included. Although ethical issues are not here, you can add the ethical issue as far as the research findings are concerned. Clearly, you have to indicate what the proposed methodology is. Okay, then the next one in the component is significance of the research. Simply put, we have identified that your research will support some or outcome. Okay, so the significance of the research indicates the potential contribution or potential benefit that your research will bring to bear after your study. Okay, so discuss the potential benefit. And here we are looking at 3 main areas that your research may possibly benefit. Okay, if you remember when we're discussing the types of research under the use, we talk about basic or pure research and applied research. In this regard, we are looking at the benefits to maybe a scientific community, those who are going to use the research, the benefit to addressing specific needs, applications of the research practice, and also to policy. How does it shape new ways of doing things? So in terms of the first one, implications to research, we are simply saying implication to knowledge. Okay, so that if I'm talking about financial technology in the domain of information system as a scientific community, how or what new knowledge am I adding to what is already known as far as fintech applications are concerned? Or maybe the methodology that I'm using, is it something new? How does it also shape knowledge? So implications to research is more about knowledge or new knowledge we are creating to support what is already known. That is one of the benefits. The second one is implications to practice. So your recommendations from the research, how does that help managers, or how does it help managers to shape new products or projects they intend to undertake? So that if I identify from my research that digital enthusiasts are more interested in user-friendliness and security of the platform they use, managers of maybe, let's say, Momo. So I'm expecting MTN managers or their CEO to look at the features of the platform that consumers are using. How do they make it more user-friendly? Then also in terms of security, either people are stealing other people's money or people are finding ways to withdraw consumers' money. They have to maybe say that based on the outcome, they are going to develop a robust security system or features that will control the either users being defrauded or monies being withdrawn without the user's notification. So there should be implication to practice, means that the study is addressing a specific need. Implication to policy, we need to also show that our research we are going to conduct is going to drive policy. For example, I have to say that maybe the outcome of my research is supposed to shape Bank of Ghana directives or Bank of Ghana policy directions on the use of what? Financial technology applications in Ghana. So they may have to develop maybe a robust procedures, or maybe indicating to the telecommunication industries new directions as far as fintech is concerned. So significance of the research is very important. Clearly indicates how your study will contribute to knowledge, practice, and policy. So this example you have here about the e-banking in rural banks. So clearly the author is indicating in terms of research knowledge what will be done, how the research will contribute. In terms of practice, how research will provide guidelines to rural banks. In terms of policy, how the research that you are going to do will provide feedback on policy driving the computerization of rural banks, which is critical to the operations of financier. Okay, so significance is very important. Then last not the least, we are talking about research limitations. Okay, we know that in the course of doing the research, certain things will limit how you report or how you come out with your outcomes. So limitations are more or less the conditions or shortcomings that you, the researcher, cannot control. You don't have a control over this. However, you still went on to conduct your research. So why maybe you selected a certain methodology, you have to indicate it. What limited you to select that? Usually we can talk about maybe the way you analyze your research work or you analyze the data. Perhaps your instrument you use to analyze the data, the sample, time constraint, especially for our friends who want to do long essay. We know you have only 2 semesters. This is a time constraint issue you don't have a control over. So maybe in terms of saying that you are looking at SMEs in Ghana, because of time constraint, your study only look at SMEs in Medina or SMEs in the Ododo constituency. Nicely stated because of time constraint. And maybe a sample, you can't use large sample, but you are using this specific sample. There could be a reason. So limitations must be clear. What is limiting you? Which leads us to what we call the research delimitation. Okay, the limitation here is just to say that you chose a certain way of doing your research, or you are using this particular research you are going to. These are the steps you are using. Why you did a certain literature review and why you did not consider it. Indicate it. This is where you have control over. Somebody will say, okay, instead of using business school level 300 students, why are you not including level 100 students? You have to indicate why you are using only level 300 students and why not. You have a control over this. So limit your delimitations to the things that a reader might reasonably expect you to do, but that you, for clear reasons, have decided not to do. So when I combine the two, limitations and delimitation, look at this example here. A sample of 50 computerized rural commercial banks will be selected out of 97 based on proximity for ease data collection and time constraint. You've indicated it nicely. The study will not cover the use of electronic channels such as ATMs, POS, or mobile phones. It is clearly there. It will only focus on computerization project under the mandate of, if stated it clearly. Then also you are saying that there is possibility that some of the respondents may not return their questionnaire since it will touch on their financial and operational performance. It is there. Why you think using the banks are more appropriate than using the consumers? Just state it there. So limitations, delimitation must be clearly defined. Then the project schedule, just tell us in the proposal, what are the activities you will do and the timeline. This means that your schedule must be realistic, okay? And because time is of essence, this is how a project schedule may look like. You have the chapter outline. For each chapter, what are the activities you do under them? Then the completion date. This is not a project schedule. It's even not realistic. You are saying that January, you will do what? After Christmas, you write the proposal. Then you do literature review. Sorry, you complete the literature review and go and collect data. February, you complete data collection, analyze. March, this is not realistic. Okay, so you must consider this one. Each chapter, what will be the activities you consider and the completion date. The last thing to do in the proposal is what we call the chapter outline. Okay, in simple terms, our chapter outline just show clearly in a summarized way what each chapter will entail. Just summarize them. So just short notes here. So for instance, what will go into chapter 1, what will go into chapter 2, what is the focus of chapter 3, what's the focus of chapter 4. So sometimes people just pick your proposal and they will go straight to the chapter outline. Okay, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, before they even go into the main work. So you have to clearly indicate what you will do or what entails, detailing what you do in each chapter, as you can see it there. After the chapter outline, the next thing to do is to bring your references, all the places that you have used or source of data, source of information. You need to indicate your references beautifully, and that will purely show a complete research proposal. It's important that we do that. In other words, our entire structure of our long essay will look at these chapters, either 5 or 6, depending on what you are doing. So mainly chapter 1, which is the introduction, that captures background, research problem, research question, research objective, research purpose, all of them are there. Chapter 2, literature review, detailed literature review. Chapter 3 will do the context of the study if you have to. So as I said, like my case, if I'm looking at fintech among digital enthusiasts in Ghana, maybe my context of study, we want to look at the evolution of financial technology in Ghana as my context of study. Then chapter 4, I will now talk about my methodology. 5 and 6 look at results, discussion, and complete conclusion nicely. So this is exactly how our research proposal, what is the proposal, component of the proposal, and all the things we need to consider in the proposal. So I'll pause here. If you have any question, please go on and ask your question. Any questions so far? Class, do you have any questions so far? Otherwise, I'll stop the recording here.